Hey everyone, the at-large bids finally came out for every NCAA weight class. For those of you that don't know, every weight class in every conference gets a certain amount of qualification spots based on the strength of every wrestler in the bracket. However, there are some extra spots at each weight class to equal the 33 qualifiers at each weight class, so that is where the at-large bids come into play, for the best guys that don't automatically qualify. I'm sure we all see the problem with this, and yes, some really good guys do not make it to NCAAs because of this. This video is here to detail the few at-large selections at every weight, which is normally around 4 to 5 guys, and then talk about a few wrestlers that missed out on making NCAAs, because every year there is some major head scratchers. But before I detail that, hi everyone, my name is Tanner, and this is TrueTan Wrestling. I primarily make breaking news story videos like this one, career retrospectives from time to time, and lineup breakdowns all within the D1 college wrestling and freestyle wrestling spaces. If any of that sounds interesting to you, feel free to like and subscribe for constant updates as we head into nationals, along with following me on Twitter, link in the description below for quick little wrestling and channel updates. Starting with 125, find the list of at-large selections on the screen. We have Caleb Smith of Appalachian State, Noah Cern from Missouri, Kaizen Tarakina of Iowa State, Antonio Lorenzo of Cal Poly, and rounding up the list we have Joe Mancino of Columbia. I think all these guys for sure deserve to be here, and I for sure expected Cern and Tarakina to make it, especially with their impressive winning percentage and resumes. I think Curry of Pitt is at the top of the list for guys who just missed out on making it to NCAAs. He's the only guy to beat the MAC champ Nato. He was ranked in a few of these rankings. He battled through a really tough ACC schedule, and he placed at the Illinois Matmen, but unfortunately just had a bad conference tournament. Other guys include Ferry from Kent State, who had some solid wins on the year, and Lujan of Michigan State, who was an 11th seed at Big Tens, along with Fisher, who made the Reno finals for Clarion. At 133, the at-large guys were as followed: Kyle Berwick of Wisconsin, Malik Hines of Lehigh, Dominic La Hoya of Cornell, and Dominique Zakoyan of Campbell. I am a little surprised by Zakoyan since he did lose to Grant from Davison twice during the season, but he did have a great SoCon tournament, and I'm glad to see they're rewarding guys for performing well on the backside of those tournaments. Same with the EIWA guys. Based on the spots given and the wildcard selections, it seems like they're giving more respect to the EIWA conference. Some guys that missed out would be, as mentioned, Garant, who did beat Zakoyan twice, but just had a bad backside at conferences. Spam from Buffalo battled through a very tough bracket, but missed the automatic spot, taking second in the MAC, and they only took the top guy at that weight class. And then finally, there's probably Tag of South Dakota State, who was probably a close call, but I am assuming he didn't make it because he missed a huge chunk of the season. 141 got Kaizen Clark of North Carolina, Parker Phileas of Purdue, Chad Redd of Nebraska, Dresden Simon of Central Michigan, and Joseph Zargo of Wisconsin. I think all these selections make a ton of sense, but with a weight like this with so many studs missing out on automatic qualifying spots, there's a ton of guys that would make it on other years, but unfortunately they just couldn't make it because there's so many guys missing out, but that's just how it goes sometimes. The best guy to miss is probably Goner of Appalachian State, who took second in the SoCon in a weight class with only one automatic qualifying spot. Anderson of Binghamton would have a shaky start to the season, but beat the EIWA champ during the year. And Duncan of Illinois, who was a returning All-American, did miss out, but his match count was way too small to make it with an at-large bid. Moving right along to 149, the guys that slipped in, we have Jaden Abbas of Stanford, Josh Edmond of Missouri, PJ Ogunsanya of Army, and Yaya Thompson of Northwestern. Man, when you see two returning All-Americans and a national qualifier on this list, that's never good for guys on the bubble. Madrigal of George Mason I talked about in my last video, and he is a tough senior wrestler, but based on his injury, I don't know if he would have been able to go anyway. Store of Michigan is a big one for team points, but his match count was a little bit too small, and his resume was a little bit too all over the place to unfortunately get him a spot, and he did beat Thomas at Big Ten too, which is a little unfortunate. 157 is bringing Michael Petit of Buffalo, Hunter Richard of Cornell, Chase Saldate of Michigan State, Wyatt Sheets of Oklahoma State, and Jordan Slipka of Ohio. There are some interesting picks here, probably mean a lot of conferences went chalk or relatively accurate, and I am glad the MAC and EIWA schools are getting the bids that they deserve. However, some other guys that are out for the 2020 tournament are Hornfeck of West Virginia, who had a shaky year for the Mountaineers, but 2 years in a row now, he has beaten Wyatt Sheets at conferences, and both years, Sheets will be going to the big show, and he will not. We also have Unger of Duke, who has beat Brady of Virginia Tech this season, and then there was also Stanford's Derek Ott, who really started coming along near the end of the year, but unfortunately that wasn't enough to get him to nationals. 165, we'll see the following getting at-large bids: Caleb Fish of Michigan State, William Formate of Appalachian State, Brian Ryan Meyer of Lehigh, and Anthony Valencia of Arizona State. Those are some really big names to say the least, but the big name missing is obviously Travis Whitlake of Oklahoma State, the returning 4th place All-American, but he missed a chunk of the year and lost some questionable matches, along with going 0-2 at conferences, so it really stinks for the Cowboys, but they will not be seeing Travis Whitlake at Nationals this season. Dan Bronigal ended his season with an injury default in round 1 and then a medical forfeit in the round 1 of the Constellations, and that ended his season and did not end well with the at-large committee. And Etzel Penn State made his return for the Nittany Lions, but just missed out on an automatic qualifying spot and did not get an at-large bid for Detroit. The 174 at-large guys are Chris Foca of Cornell, Garrett Ninehouse of Purdue, Bailey O'Reilly of Minnesota, and Sal Perrine of Ohio. I really agree with these. Foca had an injury and should make it. Both the Big Ten guys are studs and have quality wins, and Perrine had a nice resume and just wrestled literally one bad match at conferences, losing in literally the last 5 seconds. However, that still means there are bubble guys like McNally of Wisconsin, the Kent State transfer, who was a round of 12 finisher and a top 6 seed. Olmus of Oregon State and Wills of Little Rock were 2 impressive guys in the Pac-12, but when you're wrestling a small conference, it is really hard to make it to NCAA sometimes. 184 had a ton of studs waiting in suspense to see if they were going to get an at-large bid, which shows the depth of the weight class, and it is crazy to think how many guys auto-qualified at some of these conferences, and there was still really good guys not making it in the right placement rounds. But with all that said, here are wildcard selections. We have Dakota Gear of Oklahoma State, Max Lyon of Purdue, Tate Samuelson of Wyoming, and Donnell Washington of Indiana. This is a loaded at-large field. Heck, I could see some of these guys All-American, and one of them is a 2-time All-American already. There's just a ton to say about 184, but let's see who missed out on making the at-large selections. First, I want to talk about N. Tracy, who had an impressive year for Penn, but this year it looks like he'll be on the outside looking in, along with DeAndre Nassar, who was a national qualifier last season for Cleveland State. 197, we're going to see JT Brown of Army, Alan Kohler of Northern Colorado, Will Feldkamp of Clarion, and Jarian Smith of Maryland. I agree with all these, and all these guys have pretty good resumes, just missing out a little bit on their auto spots. The guys who are on the outside bubble are Shaw of North Carolina, who battled really tough this season, along with Robluski of Illinois, who beat some national qualifier level guys, but just way too many questionable losses. And the final guy to mention is probably Bachman of Utah Valley, who has 2 wins over Clother, an at-large selection from Northern Colorado, this season, and he outplaced him at conferences. Finally, we take a look at the heavyweight picks with Matthew Cover of Princeton, Terrell Gorin of Northern Iowa, Zachary Nightenward of Hofstra, Brandon Metz of North Dakota State, and Michael Wolfgram of West Virginia. Expect to see a lot of Big 12 this NCAA, along with a lot of Big 10 and EIWA heavyweights, because based on allocations and at-large picks, these weights are so deep in these conferences. Decent Bob from Duke was a fun heavyweight to watch this season in the ACC, but unfortunately will miss out on the tournament, along with Whiteman, who tried his best to make it for North Carolina, but just missed out on an automatic spot and his at-large selection. I would also argue that Begoli of Clarion had a good enough tournament at max to be considered for an at-large selection, but I guess his resume was just a little bit too all over the place to really be considered. Well, everyone, that was a much quicker and straightforward video than usual, but I wanted to get this news out to everyone in a timely fashion, especially with the brackets and bracket show coming out really soon. There is a lot of stuff to cover is basically what I'm trying to say, so expect a lot of content like this. If you guys enjoyed this though, hit that like button or subscribe button for all the content that is quickly approaching. Also, feel free to leave a comment on some guys you wanted to see make the NCAA tournament, or that if you may agreed with any of these at-large picks, feel free to voice your opinion in the comment section below. Now, with all that said, be sure to watch the bracket show, be sure to watch my content on the bracket show, and I will see you guys in the next one. Take care, everybody.